Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Obedient Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Allison Chavez. Super excited to be here with you and grateful that you are tuning in today. We're talking today about pressure and why high capacity leaders tend to feel a lot of pressure even when things are working. So if you are a high capacity leader and everything on paper is working, but internally you feel constant pressure, this episode is definitely for you. So I want you to picture it. Sales are coming in, revenue is stable. You got clients, your family's fine, nothing is technically on fire, and yet your body never fully relaxes. There's like this low-grade tension that's running in the background, this subtle urgency, constant scanning for what might break next. This is not because you're failing. This is not because you have a character flaw. It's because your system is carrying more than it was designed to carry. So today we're talking about pressure, not as a productivity issue, not as a discipline issue, but as a nervous system signal. Because most leadership problems are not strategy problems. They're actually regulation problems. And this is what I have actually really discovered for myself. I used to think that I was a terrible business person and that I was a terrible strategist. And I have learned over the last, 25 years that I've been an entrepreneur that that's simply not the case. I have never lacked for strategy. I always have different ideas of what we could try and what to experiment with and test and all of those things. And I always thought I had a strategy problem. No, what I have is a nervous system problem and a regulation problem. So let's talk about what pressure actually is. It's not responsibility, it's not importance, and it's not ambition. Those are three things that pressure is not. Those things are actually leadership qualities, but pressure is a nervous system state. Responsibility is clean, right? It sounds like this is mine to handle. I can take care of this. I'll show up. But pressure feels a whole lot different. It sounds like if I drop this, everything falls apart. I can't mess this one up. This is all on me. Responsibility is very grounded, but pressure is very braced. And I was like conflating the two for many, many years, pressure and responsibility. You can actually carry an enormous amount of responsibility without your nervous system acting like there's a threat. But pressure is what happens when your body treats responsibility like danger. Let's talk about importance. Importance and pressure are not the same thing. Something can matter very, very deeply without your chest tightening, without your jaw clenching, without your system staying on high alert. When leaders say, well, of course I feel pressure, like that's because this really matters, they're unconsciously equating tension with value. It's kind of like the harder I work for this, the more I deserve it. And if something comes to you too easily, then you don't actually deserve it. Now, there is absolutely value in work. There's a saying that says if something comes too quickly or too easily, then that success is neither lasting nor valued. And I do believe that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. We're talking about like, oh man, that wasn't as hard as it normally is. Maybe I did something wrong, or maybe I don't actually deserve it. All right, those are the kind of things that can happen in our mind. But importance does not have to activate you. It doesn't have to trigger you at all. I want you to think about your family, think about your friends, the people that you love the best. Do you serve them the best when you're tense? Can you actually be present with them when you're tense? Pressure is not proof that something matters. It's proof your body doesn't feel safe holding it. And let's talk about ambition. Ambition is awesome. Ambition is all about drive and vision and desire. And ambition is movement towards something meaningful. Pressure is the fear of losing it. Ambition says, I want to build this, but pressure says, if this doesn't work, I'm in trouble. Oh, gosh, I remember this was years and years and years ago, probably 10 years ago, I would think. It was a long, long time ago, but I remember like I was at the bottom of the barrel. I tend to go to the bottom of the barrel a lot in business. And, like raise your hand, put it in the chat if you're watching on YouTube, if you can relate to this. Like as an entrepreneur, like, man, there's lots of lows. There's lots of bottoms of the barrel, right? So I was at another bottom of the barrel moment. And I remember saying, well, if things don't turn around in the next 3 months, we'll be destroyed. And even I recognized how dramatic I was being in that moment. I'm like, wait, like, will we really be destroyed? No, we won't. But it felt like everything, like I was walking this tightrope all the time. And it was, it was the difference between, financial safety and falling off the Grand Canyon edge, right? Like that's how big it felt in my mind. And that's what pressure did for me, working against my ambition. So you can actually be enormously driven without living in this state of constant urgency. There is a big distinction in this, and this is the core distinction. Pressure is a nervous system state. Responsibility, importance, ambition, all of those are leadership qualities. They're not in the same category. Pressure sounds like I must, but clean leadership sounds like I choose. And I really have loved making that distinction and having that perspective in my life. And I have to remember that because true confessions have been in an overloaded, overwhelmed nervous system state for quite some time. And now I'm paying for it, but it's okay. It's okay because I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I know, and now I can take steps to reverse all of that. And thankfully, I have a really, really strong body and a really, really strong immune system. My nervous system is just needing a revamping. And this is why this kind of talk is so important to me, because I really think that so many leaders, executives, founders, especially entrepreneurs, are just like, we're successful on paper, but we don't feel that way internally. And there's this constant vigilance about, when's the next shoe going to drop? Because it has in the past, right? But it doesn't have to be that way anymore. So I have to continually tweak my perspective almost on a daily basis so that I'm not operating from flight, freeze, or fawn, getting my nervous system out of survival, out of fight or flight, and into rest and digest. And there really is conscious effort towards this. High capacity leaders tend to blur the lines between pressure and success and pressure and leadership qualities because we've performed well under pressure for years and years and years. But performing well under pressure does not mean pressure is required. It just means that we've adapted to it, is all. And there's a point where pressure works until it doesn't. And when it no longer works, wow, it doesn't work in a really big way. At least for me, that's what I have found. So here's the part that nobody talks about. Success often increases the pressure. It doesn't decrease pressure because growth without regulation teaches the body that safety is conditional. So you can only relax once everything is done. You only feel safe once you hit your numbers. You can only exhale once the room approves. And if your success was built during a season of grind, of urgency, or survival, then your body actually wired success and tension together. So now your system thinks tension equals performance, pressure equals productivity, urgency equals leadership. And so when things are going well, instead of relaxing, your body braces harder because it doesn't want to lose it. So this is where high capacity leaders quietly begin to feel trapped by the very life that they've built, not because they don't love it, but because their internal operating system never learned how to succeed without strain. And I have to raise my hand to this. This is exactly what I experienced when I was first growing my company. And success goes like this. And if you're lucky, then it's always trending upward, even though you have these dips. But man, really, really low lows, really, really high highs. And that's what I experienced. And so I was in anxiety and urgency and pressure and push as I'm creating my empire. And then I get to my first summit, right? My first big milestone. And instead of like taking a breath and looking at this beautiful vista and what I've created, I'm like, oh no, what happens if I lose it? And then I've got all these people around me that are like, you're in really great energy. You've got great momentum. Now double this in half the amount of time. And so it was just constant pressure that, and it just felt like heat was always being turned up and turned up. And on one hand, I loved my life. I loved the experiences I was able to have with my family. I loved being able to say yes to things I'd never been able to say yes to before. And on the other hand, I really hated how complex my life had become. I longed for simplicity. I was like, everything is riding on me. I want somebody to take care of me. Like, it was just, wow. You know, it was, pressure increases because of success. It doesn't decrease when you get more and more successful. So, symptoms of pressure. How does this show up? You know that I hate theory. I want to know like how this looks in my life, what this translates to in my life, and then what can I do to make this better, to overcome it, to shift my perspective, or whatever that is. So, pressure shows up in myriad ways. It can show up like you wake up tired even after sleeping. You feel behind before the day even starts. You can't enjoy wins for more than 10 minutes. Rest feels unproductive. Delegation feels risky. You replay conversations at night. You feel responsible for everybody's emotional stability. If you've raised your hand to any of this, it's okay. Don't be beating yourself up for this. But, you know, awareness is that first step of being able to course correct and to close gaps. Because on paper, you look steady, but internally, your system is always scanning. So this isn't a sign of weakness. It's just a sign of activation. And long-term activation always costs something. It costs creativity. It costs emotional range. It costs spiritual clarity, physical resilience. It costs you joy. And this is why high capacity leaders burn out while they're still performing. The performance stays. Let me be really clear about this. The performance stays. What disappears is the peace. And this is what I found was happening in my own life as well. I don't replay conversations over and over in my mind, and my mind doesn't race. But what my mind does is it loops. It loops in catastrophe and worst case scenario over and over and over again. And I'm a big journaler. I've journaled since I was 8 years old. I got baptized when I was 8. And I remember my great aunt Zola. Yes, that was her name. Aunt Zola gave me this giant journal, this hardbound journal. And she was like, write in your journal. And so I did. I have been a faithful, diligent journal writer since I was 8 years old. And journaling can be very therapeutic. And journaling can just show that you're looping over and over and over again. And I'm writing these things and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. I'm so tired of this loop. How do I get myself out of this loop? So maybe it's not that you're replaying conversations over and over and you're not necessarily ruminating in things, but your mind just continues to loop. That's what mine does anyway. So what I am after and what I help others really be able to receive is that peace again. The performance isn't going to go away unless you want the performance to go away, but you've reached this level of success because you've got skills and you've got mad skills, right? And I don't want my performance ability to go away. I don't want that to disappear. I really love being on camera. I love being on stage. I love teaching people. I love blessing people's lives. I don't want that to disappear, but I want to be able to receive peace as a constant rather than peace feeling fleeting and fragile. So we got to reframe this. Sustainable leadership actually does not require tension. It doesn't. Clarity comes from regulation. Capacity comes from steadiness. Leadership becomes clean when your urgency slows down. And I'm talking about like your internal urgency, when we can slow that down. Now, regulation does not mean that you care any less. It means your body is no longer confused about danger. So you can make decisions without bracing or second guessing or analysis paralysis. You can grow without gripping. You can lead without scanning the horizon every 30 seconds because pressure actually is not your edge. Steadiness is your edge. The leaders who last decades are not the most urgent. They're the most regulated. They can handle success without tightening. They can handle expansion without activating survival. And this is the internal operating system most leadership development never actually addresses. You can optimize strategy all day long, and there is a place for strategy. But if your nervous system believes that success is unsafe, you will sabotage peace every time you reach it. So let me give you something practical to take away with. When was the last time you felt completely at ease while things were going well? So you weren't distracted, you weren't numbing, you weren't exhausted, you were at ease. If that's hard to remember, that's not a character flaw. That's just data. And like a brilliant mentor I once had who has turned into a dear friend, she was the one who convinced me that the data is sexy. And we love the data. We love to look at the numbers and the KPI and all of this beautiful, beautiful data because the data, generally speaking, does not lie. This work that I do is not about becoming someone new. It's about allowing your body to experience success without contraction. So if this resonated, this is the work that we do here. We stabilize the internal operating system so pressure stops being your baseline. You don't need to become someone new. You need to lead from the part of you that already knows how to stand steady. If this episode helped you put into language something you've been carrying quietly, please share it with somebody else. Share it with another leader who looks fine on paper but feels that weight internally. If you're not already subscribed on YouTube, please make sure you are. If you're listening to this on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, please rate and review, but especially share this episode with others because we're not just talking strategy here. We're building leaders who can sustain what they build. And remember, until next time, keep your peace close, your obedience strong, and your rebellion holy.